Hi, everyone. My name is Jamie Curtis, and I am part of the Pacific Standard Time group. And then here are our other group members.
I'm Devin.
And I'm Melissa.
Okay, awesome. So we are going to be talking about our replication study today. So here's the agenda for our session. We'll be starting off with a literature review, then we'll dive into participants and settings, materials, behavior definition, data collection, design, baseline phases, treatment phases, IOA, treatment integrity, results, limitations, and finally our conclusion. So I just wanted to start off the literature review by talking about some recommendations from the Center for Disease Control. So the CDC recommends that adults should engage in at least 150 to 300 minutes of moderate to intense physical activity, and that's per week. However, in a study done by Troino in 2008, they found that less than 5% of adults actually meet these recommendations. So because of this, there really is a great need for behavioral interventions to increase physical activities, especially in sedentary adults who are much more prone to disease. So just looking at that 5% statistic, you may be asking, why do so few adults participate in sufficient amounts of physical exercise when it's such a good thing? Well, this quote from a study done by Washington, Bana, and Gibson will probably help to answer that question. So they said that the naturally reinforcing consequences of maintaining adequate levels of physical activity are often less delayed and probabilistic in nature. Some of these reinforcing consequences include weight loss, increases in strength and stamina, and decreased likelihood of developing diabetes or cancer. So these are all really great reinforcers, but they're also very, very delayed. They continue by saying that naturally occurring punishing consequences are often more immediate and certain. Some examples of the more aversive consequences include pain, discomfort, and difficulty breathing. So as we can see with exercise, the more immediate effect is often aversive. And this may be a big factor in why many adults don't participate in as much physical activity as they should. However, as the research continued, they said contingency management procedures bridge the gap through the delivery of more immediate and probabilistically more likely reinforcers. So we can actually find a way to increase exercise in adults by introducing reinforcement contingencies. So this is a problem that can be solved. Contingency management, as we discussed before, can help counterbalance the immediate aversive consequences that follows exercise. So just some of the reinforcement methods and schedules that have been used include prize draws, earning points to exchange for items, and monetary compensation is also another very, very common reinforcement that is used. So let's talk about a few of the specific studies that use these contingencies. So again, in the study by Washington, Bana, and Gibson, these researchers were able to use a variable ratio schedule. They use a prize draw contingency. And the individuals that participated in this study were able to really increase their physical activity. So this contingency was very, very successful. In a study by Epstein, Salins, and O'Brien, they were able to actually increase time spent in physical activities in obese children. So they divided the children into three different groups. One group was reinforced when the individuals participated in physical activity. The second group was reinforced when they did not participate in their favorite sedentary activities, and then the third group was a control group and received an amount of 35 points every day. And they were able to demonstrate that the individuals that were reinforced for participating in physical activity were actually chose to participate in physical activity more often, even more than those who were reinforced for not participating in sedentary activities. Okay, so let's talk about the study by Curdy, Dallery, and Jesse. So in this study, they used an internet-based contingency. They used a monetary system for reinforcement. The behavior was steps per day. They also used a changing criterion design, and they used it to shape the individual's behaviors to achieve a goal of 10,000 steps in 3 out of 5 days. So 6 sedentary adults originally participated in this study, and all the participants were successful in increasing their daily steps to that 10,000 step goal.
So I'm going to get into the participants and the settings. There were 3 females. All 3 are graduate students attending Ball State University. They all had between low to moderate physical activity. 1 lives in Idaho and 2 live in California. When we first did the study, there were 4 participants, but 1 dropped out due to personal reasons. For the settings were in the home, in the gym, or outside. Outside meaning, I'm going for a walk outside on sidewalks and yeah. So for materials, we used a Fitbit watch, a Fitbit app, and an iPhone health app. So with the Fitbit watch, it included the smart bracelet, package box, user manual, and an app that can be downloaded to view results on any Android or iPhone cellular device. I'll get into more detail with that. The functions of the Fitbit watch had a real-time clock, a calorie tracker, a distance tracker, a step pedometer, sleep monitor, which we didn't use. The sedentary alert showed goal progress, health data share, so we can share our data with each other, and the wrist sense. So with the Fitbit app, that was the app to download with the watch. It was available for Android 4.4 and above and iOS 8 and above. And this app helped track progress in full detail. So it showed us how many floors we walked, how many miles we walked, how many calories we burned. And, if we wanted to track our exercise, it'll show us in minutes how long our exercise was. And also, since we all had iPhones, we used an iPhone health app. And this was used an hour of certain days to compare with the Fitbit app. And the reason why we use the iPhone Health app is specifically for the IOA data and in treatment integrity. So the behavior definition we chose was taking a step. And that is defined as taking a foot and moving it in a forward or backward motion to pull the body to a new position while standing. Examples of this would be walking to the bathroom, going on a long walk around the neighborhood, and moving from the kitchen sink to the kitchen table. Non-examples of this definition would be crawling on the floor, rolling over while laying down, and moving from one sitting position on a couch to another position without using feet.
For the data collection portion of our study, as Melissa already mentioned, we use the Fitbit to calculate the frequency of our steps. The Fitbit was worn only during waking hours, meaning we didn't wear it obviously when we were asleep. And also we did not wear it during water activities. So this included showering, swimming if need be. To assist in keeping track of our steps, we used what's called a master step sheet, or as the original study referred to it, an activity log. We used this via Google Sheets, so all of us had access to the log, and we can also take a look into each other's data and make sure that all participants were pulling their weight throughout the study. So in this log, we had different columns, some labeled date of session, number of steps, compensation, step goal calculation, IOA, video link, and a comment section. The comment section actually came in handy because for some of the participants in this study, our watches glitched. And so we lost all data from that day. So we could write in that comment section, our watch glitched that day, or we were having trouble with it. Or if we were sick and had a low amount of steps that day, that could help us explain it later on in our data. Also, as Melissa already mentioned, we did use the iPhone Health application app for IOA purposes. Of course, we used our iPhone video cameras to take at least a 3-second video of our watches every night and upload those videos to YouTube. Using the YouTube link, then we later posted it in the master step log. So everyone had access to each other's videos just to make sure, again, everyone was pulling their weight. And of course, with all of this being said, we needed internet required to post our videos. As far as the design goes, we used the same type of design in our study. That was a changing criterion design. So this meant that all participants needed to meet their step goal prior to moving on to the next step goal. So for example, the ultimate goal was 10,000 steps or more for 3 consecutive days over a 5-day block. So to calculate our first step goal, we averaged the amount of steps from our baseline. So we added the total amount of steps, divided how many days it was calculated over, and then we rounded up to the nearest hundredth. And then from there, we added on 1,000 steps if we met that goal. And that's how we decided how to move on to the next criterion. So as I mentioned earlier, the steps were assessed over 5-day blocks, and the participants were required to meet or exceed the goal on at least 3 out of the 5 days. This did not have to be consecutive. It could be any 3 days just out of that 5-day block. So it allowed for 2 rest days in which we could have any number of steps without being penalized. For our baseline phases, there were 2 throughout the study. The first one conducted across 5 consecutive days or until a steady state was established. Participants were not monetarily compensated during the first phase. And I mention this because during the treatment phase, for the first portion of our study, we were monetarily compensated, just not during the baseline. And it's important to note that participants did not have a set goal during the baseline because we were just trying to get a gauge of the average amount of steps and go from there. For baseline 2, it was conducted exactly the same as baseline 1. Moving on to our treatment phases. So the participants for phase 1 were monetarily compensated, like I mentioned. So here's the breakdown of how we essentially paid ourselves. So we received $5 per video that was posted in the master step sheet or the activity log. An additional $3 was given if the step goal was met. And the example being for the step goal compensation. So if my goal was between 2,000 to 2,999 steps, and I met this goal, then I would receive $2 in addition to the $3 and $5 that I mentioned above. And our study ended once a participant met or exceeded, again, 10,000 steps across 3 consecutive days over a 5-day block. For phase 2, participants did not move on to this phase until phase 1 was completed. And participants performed the exact same thing as phase 1, except no monetary compensation was provided during this phase.
Okay, so for our our IOA data collection, we use the Fitbit devices as well as the Apple Health app to track how many steps we were able to acquire in an hour. So during this hour, we put our phones in our pockets so that it could consistently track our steps. In the Apple Health app, it sorts steps into 1-hour bins, so we could easily monitor how many steps we took per hour there. And then, of course, the Fitbit allowed us to monitor our steps for the hour period as well. So at the end of the hour, we totaled the steps from each device, and then we recorded them in our master step sheet. So at the very end of the study, we were able to total all of the steps for each device, and then we would take the smaller sum and divide it by the larger sum, and this gives us a total count IOA. So between all of the participants, we had an average of 87% inter-observer agreement. Okay, so this is data for participant 1. The total count IOA ended up being 82%, and this individual had 45 total data points. So this means that there were 45 days that this individual recorded step data. Now, 16 of these days, the individual collected IOA data. So that means that 35% of the total data had IOA measurements as well. So participant 2 had a total count IOA of 96%. This individual has much fewer data points. They moved through both phase 1 and phase 2 very quickly. Their baseline level of steps was quite high initially, so they were easily able to reach the 10,000 step goal. So they have a total of 23 data points and also a total of 8 IOA data points. This also means that 35% of the total data included IOA. So for participant 3, the total count IOA is 83%. This individual had 55 data points, and total IOA data collection was 16. So that means that 29% of the data also had IOA data collection as well. So let's talk about treatment integrity. Treatment integrity is very, very important. We have our procedures that we use throughout the study, and it would have been very, very difficult to get correct results if we didn't follow the procedures accurately. So we used a checklist in order to remind ourselves what the procedures were and to check in on each other to make sure that we were following these procedures. So these are a few of the questions that we asked. So over the past 7 days, did you wear the Fitbit during all waking hours except for showering and sleeping? Did you input your daily steps at the end of the day into the Excel spreadsheet provided? Did you record a 3-second video for each day and upload it to the master activity log? Did you attend or are you planning to attend the Google Hangout meeting at 8:30 every week? So we had a Google Hangout session once a week to make sure that we went through this treatment fidelity checklist, and we needed to make sure that all individuals attended or made other arrangements. We also asked if the IOA data was taken and recorded on all of the assigned days. And then we checked the IOA data collection procedure by asking the individuals if the phone was kept in their pocket during the entire hour block.
So our results showed that all participants showed an increase in steps. One participant could not get past the 6,200 steps. That was their goal before reaching phase 2. Participant 1 averaged in 5,663 steps. Participant 2 averaged in 8,736 steps. And participant 3 averaged 4,447 steps. So in phase 1, participants earned between $113 and $239 with a median of $120. Participants increased their steps by 1,000 steps once their step goal was met after 5 days. Participants submitted an average of 63% of their scheduled videos. And all 3 participants improved between 47 and 72% with a median of 55% over screening averages. So I'm going to get into the graphs of each participant. 2 things that I wanted to point out were the dashed vertical lines, which represents participant goals for every 5 days, and the dots represent amount of steps walked in a day. So as you can see for participant 1, we have her step goal on the very top. And as you can see on the very last 5-day block, her goal was to reach 8,800 steps. But as you can see, for 3 consecutive days, she did hit 10,000 steps or above. And because of that, she was able to go on to phase 2. For participant 2, she got through it pretty quickly. Her baseline average was already high, so her first goal was 8,200 steps. And then, after that 5-day block, she added another 1,000, which ended up being 9,200 steps. As you can see, her last 5-day block, she did hit that 10,000 steps or above for 3 consecutive days, which then led her to move on to phase 2 pretty quickly. For participant 3, you can see for her 6,200 steps, it took her, a while to try to reach that goal. But I think the reason why, or some reasons why she couldn't meet that goal were some time constraints. I think maybe if she was given a little bit more time, she could have reached her goals. Also, there were reinforcement strains, and this participant did have some personal issues, which could have been a factor as to why she couldn't reach the 6,200 steps and move on to phase 2. So for the results for phase 2, 2 of the 3 participants did increase their steps. They both met 10,000 steps for 3 consecutive days. Participant 1 averaged in 4,781 steps, and participant 2 averaged in 8,764 steps. Participant 2 increased steps from phase 1 by 207 steps. Participant 1 decreased steps by 567 steps, and that was due to participant 1 ending phase 2 early. She met her goal of, she met 10,000 steps for 3 consecutive days. Both participants improved between 25 to 75% over screening averages and submitting an average of 60% of their scheduled videos. Participant 3, as I explained earlier, was not able to finish phase 2 and meet the 10,000 steps. She was not able to exceed her goal of 6,200 steps. And here are the graphs for phase 2. As you can see, participant 1 did get through phase 2 pretty quickly. You can see at the last 5-day block that her first 3 days, she did hit 10,000 steps or more in 3 consecutive days. And then participant 2 also got through phase 2 pretty quickly as well. You can see that, her baseline was pretty high already. So her goal was 7,900 steps, but for the first 3 days, she was able to finish phase 2 with that 10,000 steps or above, which ended the study right there for participant 2.
So I'll be going over some limitations that we ran into while conducting our study. So we realized pretty quickly on that this project relied on a lot of self-reporting methods. So what that means is we were each responsible for making sure we wore our watch when we were supposed to be wearing it, recording the data into the master step sheet every single night prior to going to bed, and then also remembering to take those videos, upload them to YouTube, get the link from YouTube, and copy and paste it into the master step sheet. It doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're actually going through it, you realize how much work needs to be done in order to making sure that you're following the study procedures. So there wasn't an experimenter making us do it or reminding us to do it. We relied on ourselves to make sure we were following the procedures appropriately. So kind of our solution to that, to making sure that everyone is held accountable for their part, we decided to use the Google Sheets rather than to just use a separate individual Excel sheet to keep track of our data. This made sure that everyone else can see everyone else's data, make sure they're following along in the study, they're on the day that they're supposed to be, they're collecting their IOA data. So it kind of counterbalanced. That was our solution to the self-reporting methods. One limitation that's mentioned within our original study, they did bring up a really good point. It's called the one body authentication problem. So what that means is that there's really technology out there called remote sensors. So each individual has a unique heartbeat, just like each individual has their own fingerprint. So with the remote sensors, if they're put into the Fitbit watches, they're actually able to tell participant 1 is actually wearing their watch, participant 2 is really wearing their watch, because there's no way to verify that each participant actually wore their own watch during the course of the study. I could have put it on my dog. I could have given it to a friend who's more athletic than I am. There's no real way to verify that I was the one wearing my watch and this is my true data unless I had that remote sensor. Another big limitation, since we did conduct this study during the winter months, was poor weather conditions. So some of us endured snow, thunderstorms, rain, things of that nature. So we weren't obviously able to go outside and take our animals for a walk or just take ourselves for a walk if it was snowing outside. So that kind of limited us, and maybe one reason why participant 3 was not able to fully meet phase 1 of the study. Another limitation was that men did not participate in the study. Like Melissa mentioned earlier, we did have 4 group members, but 1 dropped out due to personal reasons. But it would have been interesting to compare his data to our data. And again, illness and family emergencies played a big role as far as limitations. At some point during the study, all of us were sick and were not able to either meet the 10,000 steps per day goal, let alone their step goal for that 5-day block. And due to the time constraint of the study, because we only had this semester, portion of the semester to do it, the study was ended before all participants finished. So it is possible that if there was more time, participant 3 could have finished phase 1, moved on to phase 2, and potentially completed phase 2. A huge limitation that we figured out in our study pretty early on was that participants paid themselves. So it wasn't a third-party experimenter paying us every time we posted a video or met our goal. It was ourselves. So it was potentially less effective than if we did have a third party paying us instead of us paying ourselves. So this is where that reinforcement strain comes in.
So in our study, all 3 participants were motivated to increase their steps in phase 1. So this study did provide evidence to support that monetary consequence, and it did increase walking in sedentary adults. Although in phase 2, monetary consequence was not given, participants 1 and 2 did continue the momentum of increasing their steps. So it did, motivate them to want to stay on track and kind of see how many steps that, they could do. One thing that I did notice was that since the Fitbit provided that instant feedback to each participant about overall activity, it could have been a factor in motivation for increasing steps. And when comparing these results to the original study did state that experiment 1 was slightly more effective than experiment 2, and that kind of shows in our study as well. And I guess that concludes our presentation. Thank you for giving us a listen, and hope you guys have a great day.